we simply do not understand the significance of pain and distress in our life. Without pain, we just destroy ourselves. Avoiding our pain, we destroy ourselves. Our lives as a human species is such a mess because it's mostly the product of human beings trying to get away from the pain they're causing themselves and one another and denying it in the next instant or during it. If you just use your meditation to feel better, what you're doing unintentionally and without realizing is you're setting up a reactionary response to the way you felt before you felt better. So you're not actually coming to terms with any pain, any discomfort at all. You're just making yourself feel better. So you're escaping it. This is not what meditation is about. Let's talk about how meditation actually works. And what does that even mean? It works. In our life, when people are distressed, our friends or family or people close to us or even ourselves, we try to make them feel better. The essential problem and the first mistake we make when someone is distressed or in pain, we try to offer them a way to feel different than the way they're really feeling. So we offer them a way to escape the distress or the pain they're in by meditation techniques, by what we talk about with them. If it's a child, give them a lolly, turn the TV on. We do a lot of different things, almost everything in our life, to alter or escape the way we feel. But if someone's distressed and someone's in pain, is this really taking care of them? Is this really what they need? Or is what they really need to actually be supported whilst they're in that pain during the time that they're going through that condition or in that distress? Do they really need us? Do we really need to be made to feel completely different to what we really are? And how is this achieved? Mostly through thinking, through any sort of talking, any sort of analysing, any sort of meditation technique, which is thinking. We distract ourselves or one another from the distress or the disturbance or the pain that we're in. Why do we do this? We do this because we simply do not understand the significance of pain and distress in our life. And why don't we understand it? Because we spent our whole life figuring out ways to distract from and avoid it. Pain and distress is the one thing in our life, that we are continually running away from, continually avoiding. And so it's the one thing and the one part of us that we don't understand because we've never spent any time with it. We've not spent time with ourselves in pain unless we're forced to. And then we don't really spend time with ourselves in pain, feeling that pain. We complain about it, we fight it, we drug it out, we analyse it, we do everything we can to not be in pain, to not be feeling any distress. And so consequently, we only know what it's like when we're in reaction to pain or distress or an uncomfortable feeling. We don't actually know the feeling itself. Because when you're in reaction to pain or distress or a feeling, the reaction is made up of judgment, the reaction is made up of opinions and attitudes and fears and biases and so forth. That thought reaction adds a whole new colour, a whole new experience on top of the feeling of pain or distress. So very rarely does any human being ever actually experience pain or distress or themselves in a state of pain or distress as that really is. They mess with it so much that by the time they finish messing with it, the state they're in is overwhelming because of their reactions, because of their story, because of their avoidances, because of their escapisms. It's so overwhelming that it hurts them, spins them out, confuses them. And they never want to go there again. They think that which they just experienced is their pain or their distress, but it isn't. They didn't get anywhere near their pain or distress as it really is, because they're thinking, they're reacting, their ideas about it stop them. The ideas that we have about any condition we're in induces a completely different experience of that condition. It's not even an experience of that condition anymore. It's an experience of our thoughts about that condition, our fears about that condition, our dislike of that condition. So if we have fears of a condition, we're going to feel fear in our reaction to it. And fear might have absolutely nothing to do with the condition itself, but we don't know that, because our reaction to it, which is to be frightened of pain, is what we go into. So we, thinking out of our fear, we create, manufacture, induce the experience of fear. And we never get to our pain. We never get to experience our pain or ourselves in an uncomfortable condition as that discomfort, as that disturbance, or as that pain really, truly is, without our thoughts interfering with that, without our ideas interfering with that and turning it into something which is a mixture of the pain and all of our fears and bias and ideas about it. So this is the one part of yourself and of ourselves as a human being that you know or understand the least about. The whole healing profession is created out of a reactionary misunderstanding of the significance of pain or illness. It's not our enemy. You don't even really suffer it when you just experience it as it is. When it's acceptable to the individual to be in that condition, then they just be in that condition. And what happens? They experience relief, actually. When you feel your sadness or you feel your physical pain, really feel it, there's a relief in that. Because what happens is you're coming into contact with a part of yourself that's in distress, that's in pain, and rather than complaining at that part of yourself, rather than suppressing that part of yourself, rather than judging and fighting against that part of yourself, you embrace it. And I don't mean embrace it in some, wishy-washy way. I mean, you actually accept the fact that you are that part of yourself. That is you. You are that part of you in pain. There is no escape other than the temporary escape of thinking about it. And so we use thinking for all the time, is to disconnect and disassociate from whatever we don't want to experience. But all that does is add another experience created out of that thinking to the actual, real, truthful experience of our pain or distress or whatever it happens to be that is in the body of us. So the human species is completely ignorant about pain, completely ignorant about illness, and therefore terrified of it. Why are they completely ignorant? Because we do everything not to have it. But without it, we can't function. We absolutely need it. Leprosy is an illness where people can't feel pain, and so they end up, standing next to a fire and their hand catches on fire and burns away and they don't even feel it. They look at it, whatever. They cut themselves. I was reading a story the other day about a person cutting up the vegetables, a leper, and accidentally cut his finger off. Didn't feel a damn thing. So we destroy ourselves without this pain. Pain is an alert, an intelligence of the body to keep us alive, to warn us of any imbalance. Without pain, we just destroy ourselves. Avoiding our pain, we destroy ourselves and one another. Because in avoiding our pain, we're also avoiding our sensitivity to the condition we're actually in. And fighting that condition, we put ourselves in an alternative condition, which is the product of our thinking, the product of our meditation technique, the product of our complaining, the product of thinking we're wonderful, or the product of thinking we're terrible. The product of that type of thinking, either way, is not real. It's just a thought-induced state. All these are thought induce states which are added to the state we're actually really in. And the state we're actually really in is really important to know what that state is, because that's how we know what we are and how we are. That's how we know our condition. That's how we know what we need. Without having that sensation as it actually is, we're confused. We're confused about what condition we're in. We're confused about what we need to do for that condition. When we don't have the sensitivity in ourselves, we're confused in our interaction with other people. We don't notice, we don't have the sensitivity to notice the effect we're having on one another. So we just go through life affecting one another badly, causing a great deal of harm to each other because we don't even notice it. We don't want to notice it because we learn to think so much about pain and distress that when something happens that we are hurt by, we immediately go into a thought reaction to it and get all caught up in that and don't actually feel the hurt. So if we don't feel the hurt, the other problem there is if you don't feel it, what are you doing with it? You're suppressing it. You're denying it. You're ignoring it. What happens if you ignore something? It stays there. It doesn't process. Stays exactly as it is. Minor process, but not enough. Not enough processing occurs. We have to feel that. Why not feel that? Because we've been taught not to. We've learnt not to. We're frightened of it because we don't understand it. And we don't understand it because we never go near it. The thing that happens when you do go near it is very enlightening. I think anybody who's interested in enlightenment, all you need to understand about yourself is yourself in pain, because everything else is pretty clear. Everything else is pretty well known because you spend time with yourself in all other states. It's just when you get uncomfortable or in pain that you refuse to spend time with yourself. So if you don't spend time with yourself in a particular condition over and over again, you just induce your ignorance. You develop tremendous ignorance about that. And then stories kick in. And what we think about ourselves in that condition is not actually enabling us to experience the condition as it really is and the beneficial necessity of pain or illness or whatever distress is going on inside of us. It's a beneficial thing. We need that. We need that to know our needs. We need that to take care of ourselves. We need that to know when we hurt someone else so we can feel empathy and caution in our actions. If we hurt someone, we're not feeling anything, we don't care. But when you are sensitive in yourself and you do something that's harmful to someone else, you feel that. It feels disturbing to be of harm to another person. And eventually it becomes more disturbing to be of harm to another person than it does to have the relief of taking your pain out on another person. Yeah. So why are we mean to each other? Because we're avoiding our own pain. We're avoiding our own sensitivity to ourselves. Avoiding our own pain, lose touch with that pain, spews out of us all over the place, and we just hurt one another all the time. But when you're feeling that pain, when you have a proper relationship and understanding of pain, this is a tremendous guide. The disturbance I feel in the presence of someone else when I behave in a certain way guides me as to the effect I'm having on them. Feeling that is actually an experiential taste of what it's like for them when I'm behaving that way. And that stops me in my tracks. You can't do this with morals. You can't do this with ideologies. You can't do this with rules. You can't do this with any sort of religious or psychological or social morals. You can't do it. It's all mental. You don't feel anything in the mental. You have to feel it. As a living organism, we are not naturally harmful to ourselves or other people because it hurts. Yeah? It hurts to be harmful, so we don't do it. So what does it really mean to say that a meditation works? People think that something works because it makes them feel better. But as I said earlier, what have we been doing with each other throughout our lives? When someone is distressed, all we want to do is try and make them feel better. So if you're using a meditation technique, you say it works. It works because you sit down at home after a day's stressfulness and I feel relief from that distress. That's not working. That's just escaping. Yeah, that's not really what meditation is about. Meditation is not to help you feel better. It's to bring you fully in touch with the way you truthfully feel. Otherwise, if you just use your meditation to feel better, what you're doing unintentionally and without realizing is you're setting up a reactionary response to the way you felt before you felt better. So you're not actually coming to terms with any pain, any discomfort at all. You're just making yourself feel better. So you're escaping it. This is not what meditation is about. Meditation is much deeper than that. That's just thought-based meditation. Thought-based meditation is too shallow. It's all about feeling good, having nice feelings, not having bad feelings. You need to have those bad feelings, what you call bad feelings. They're not bad. You're thinking they're bad because you've never experienced them as they really are and got the benefit of being in touch with them. So when people say meditation works, I think to myself, well, if it's making you feel good, if it's giving you relief, it ain't working. If it's giving you relief from the way you are, it's not working. When you meditate in touch with the way you are in pain or distress, the deeper process that goes on in being with that pain or distress is it breaks down your learned views, reactions, biases, resistances, and attitudes about pain and distress, which is built up through a lifetime of being made to feel better every time you're in pain or distress, or making other people feel better every time they're in pain or distress. We get to a point where our relationship with this is one of fear and avoidance and ignorance. So to be with this aspect of ourselves that we never spend time with, as it is, and this is how meditation works, is being with that in the body of you, all your thought reactions about that, all your objections and resistances and fears that you develop through a lifetime of being with a species who runs around trying to make everybody feel better anytime they're uncomfortable, mostly because they're just uncomfortable with other people being uncomfortable. So everyone's so uncomfortable with being real that we've got to make each other feel good, even though it's not real. And instead of supporting one another in the moments that we don't feel so good at all. So what is meditation doing for yourself? It's correcting this problem. It's recovering from this problem that we've created through the way in which we have our messed up relationship with pain and distress. And how is it doing that? Is by being with the sensation you're in, not using a thought-based technique to induce some ideal state, which is just another thought-based state, which is just another imagining. Not doing that, but just feeling how you are right now. And noticing any disturbance with that. Being with that, including the disturbance. Not thinking about that, not trying to change that, but feeling that in the body of you. And feeling that in the body of you, as you're feeling that, what will come is all of your habitual disturbances with pain or whatever the condition you're in that you don't like, all your habitual attitudes and disturbances that you've learned through your life that have caused you to separate from pain or disturbance any time you can, they start to come at you. You start to feel these. You start to experience these. You feel the resistance. You feel the fear. You feel the agitation that you have in relationship to having a bit of pain in your knee, or a bit of pain in your back, or a bit of sadness, or a bit of upset, or a deep sadness, or a grief. You feel any resistance to these natural sensations, which they all are, completely natural. Pain is natural. And in feeling your resistances and your biases surfacing through the process of feeling that pain, what happens is they start to dissipate. The reason they dissipate, if you're just sitting with that pain, biases are coming, but you're not acting on the bias. You don't try and avoid it. You don't run away from that pain. You just stay with it. You just feel it where it is in your body. That distress, that upset, just feel it where it is in your body. Not thinking about it, just feeling it where it is in the body. And if your thinking is going nuts, let it go nuts. That's okay. And feel that resistance to it. If you sit there for long enough, that starts to settle down. You start to prove to yourself that you are mistaken. That all of your bias and fear of these natural sensations of pain and distress was actually premature. You never experienced your pain and distress as it truly was, and for long enough to show yourself that it was perfectly fine and actually a relief to feel. You're always prematurely being taken away from it as a child, being distracted from it as a child, distracting from it as an adult, distracting from it all through our lives. Distraction, just to get away from feeling uncomfortable. Until eventually our lives become the product of pain. Our lives as a human species is such a mess because it's mostly the product of human beings trying to get away from the pain they're causing themselves and one another and denying it in the next instant or during it. And just continuing with this destructive self-harm and harm to others because we won't feel that. We won't feel that disturbance. We won't feel it and let that disturbance guide us away from harm. Or guide us not away from the pain or the effects of the harm, but from doing more harm. And so sitting with this in meditation, sitting with whatever has accumulated in your body over time, you actually find that your relationship with pain changes in the act of sitting. Your relationship with disturbances, ideas you have about people, ideas you have about life, which are causing you to be distressed, which are causing you to be confused, coming into contact with that distress, coming into contact with that confusion there and the distress there just burns out of the body. And what resolves with it, with your pain or with your distress, is you discover it's very different on the other side. It's very different to be with it. As the resistances to it, as the judgments of it, as the thoughts about it, as the habitual fear of it dissipates and drops away and leaves you, you're still sitting there, leaves you with the same physical or distressful pain that you had, but without all the complaints about it, and you discover it's fine. There's nothing wrong with this. It's actually a very fulfilling sensation to feel yourself exactly as you are because you're embracing yourself as you need to be embraced. That part of you in pain needs to be included as part of the whole of you. Otherwise, you're a divided and disconnected human being. Divided and disconnected from yourself. Divided within yourself, disconnected from yourself. You're not whole. You're not functioning with the full power of your intelligence, with the full power of your natural sensitivities. So life becomes very confusing because you're only half there, if half. Yeah, you're only partially there. The other parts of you that have a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of pain in them, are constantly being pushed aside, are constantly being avoided. You're always trying to make yourself feel better. Yeah. I was having a simple conversation with a lady today. And she's saying she likes to think about things in her childhood. The nice feelings that I used to have with this particular person or that particular person. I simply asked, well, why do you want to do that? Oh, it feels good, feels nice. So why do you want to do that? When is it that you most like to do that? And that, she said, was when I feel down. So I suggested, why don't you just stay with feeling down? What are you doing when you feel down? You're escaping feeling down. You're being driven by feeling down to go in search of some other experience remembered from your childhood. So this is how we get caught up in our past. We're looking for a better way to feel. Why are we looking for a better way to feel in our past? We don't like the way we feel now. Why don't we like the way we feel now? Because we've never actually felt it. We've never actually found out for sure whether we like it or not. So I said, come back to that down feeling. What's she going to find in that feeling of being down? That's where she's going to find herself. That's where she's going to find the aspects, the parts of herself that have been neglected, avoided, overridden. Every time they come up, she escapes into the past to remember something else. This is a very common problem. Don't do that. You're hurting yourself. I actually said this to her. You're hurting yourself when you do this. It's harmful to you. Because there you are, in the downtrodden feeling of you, and you run away from it. You turn your back on yourself, and you run away from it. The alternative is stay with it. Feel it, but feel it in your body. Just feel how that feels. And if you feel that, you feel into that, what's going to happen? Is the content of that, the feeling of that, the disturbance of that, the downness of that, is actually going to dissipate because you're coming back into contact with a part of yourself that you've been ignoring. A lot of the time, the only reason that part of yourself feels down is because you've been ignoring it. And all you got to do is come into contact with it and be there for the part of yourself that's not feeling so flash. Be there with the part of yourself in pain. That is you in this way. Meditation makes you whole again. You learn to embrace that, embracing your pain, that feeling your pain, that feeling your distress as it really is, shows you a very different experience of that distress and that pain to what you'd ever had before. And it changes your relationship to what it should be, to one of understanding the significance of that pain. And the significance of that pain is that you've actually separated from a part of yourself simply because it got hurt a little bit or a lot, or because it doesn't feel so nice or it feels terrible. Instead of admitting the truth that that's still me and there's no way to escape that. I can't escape it because it's me. It's there. But I try and escape it by using things, meditations that work for me, that make me feel better. So if I feel stressed, I'll use something to feel better. That's not meditation, that's just escapism. So how does meditation, real meditation, the meditation of the body, how does it really work? It puts us in touch with, it enables us to feel ourselves, to feel into the body of what we are, into where we hold and harbour all the unresolved pain, all the unresolved memories of our past or of our life today. And we get to catch up with ourselves as we feel our way through all of that, as that comes and goes through our meditation. So we are coming into the experience or the sense of these parts of ourselves that we always feared to feel, and discovering that that's just our thinking, that's just our bias telling us that. This is our premature judgments, and premature because we never spent enough time with our pain or our distress to discover that that is our relief. In our pain is our relief from feeling pain, actually, or our relief from being at odds with pain. That's the more important thing. It's not important that the pain comes to an end. It's important that being at odds with our pain comes to an end. And because we're always going to have pain. And why is it important to always have pain? Because pain is our guidance of what's going on inside of us and throughout us, the effects of our life. We need that. The proper relationship with it is not to fear it, but to allow it to be there, allow ourselves to be in that state. Whenever we're in that state, and that state rectifies itself, and the wholeness returns. So the main thing that causes mental and physical illness is this disassociation, is merely dividing ourselves in two, dividing ourselves away from pain into pleasure, away from pain into pleasure, away from disturbances into fantasies. And by doing this, we feel good on the outside, on the surface, but on the inside, we feel worse. It makes us feel worse. Why? Because what we're doing on the outside is actually a judgment, a continuation of the judgment of ourselves being the way we are on the inside. Trying to be different to what we truly and naturally are is the problem. That's the problem. So being with ourselves as we are, purely physical sensations in the body, when we're sitting there, what will happen is there'll be all sorts of thinking that comes and goes, for sure. Because when you're feeling the pain in your body, when you're feeling any disturbance that's there, it doesn't always have to be pain or disturbance, that's just my topic today. Whatever sensations are in your body are there meant to be felt. The more you come into the sensation in your body, the more you integrate and become whole again, and you exist as one singular whole creature. Not a division between mind, the fantasy of the mind, and a physical body, but actually a living being. So being a whole living being means you've got to embrace and live with everything about that human being until you understand and appreciate the significance of all of it. So the significance of what is going on inside of you is it's a constant rectification, it's a constant information all about you and how you're going. And in that, it's also a recovery from the effects of life. And most importantly, a recovery from the ideas that you've come up with about yourself through life, which are not even your ideas and you actually didn't come up with them. That's what everybody else taught you to think. They're other people's thoughts. So you cannot know yourself in a thought process. Not really. Because you don't get to experience yourself as you are unless you stop imposing your thoughts about yourself, your judgments of that, on as you are. As they drop away, you discover you experience yourself completely differently to the way you ever experienced yourself before. And it's a massive relief. You stop harassing yourself. So, how does meditation bring about a change in the body? Is that where there's pain and distress in the body, when you feel it, it dissipates. The body corrects itself. When you suppress it, you not only ignore it so it can't process, but the suppression of it is more compoundment of the ignorance about yourself. It's a more pushing yourself away, the denial of yourself. And it creates a great separation between how you really are compared to how you're trying to make yourself be through thinking, or through techniques, or through ideas, or through avoidance, or through feeling better. Yeah. So if you don't bother to if you don't get in the way of someone else feeling uncomfortable or in pain, but you're just there for them, be there for them. And be with your own discomfort about that. Whatever discomfort that brings up for you, that's what you've learned. That's your habitual reaction to pain that you've learned from your parents, from your peers. It's all incorrect. It's causing a lot of trouble. It's causing all the trouble because it creates this constant urge to get away from life as it really is and to try and find, some fantasy life to exist in. And that's what it is. It's a fantasy. There's no such thing. But the suffering of yourself, the suffering of life, is caused by the separation from yourself as you truly are. And that separation causes massive confusion. And that's a division between the whole of myself into only the parts that I want to know about and ignoring the parts I don't want to know about. So meditation works when it allows you to be exactly in the condition you are in. And how that works is what I've been explaining, is it enables you to discover for and from yourself that you are perfectly fine with yourself as you are. And it negates that experience of yourself as you are, negates and disproves the ideas that you've learnt about yourself from others, from society, from religion, from spirituality, from anything that's fed you some ideas about yourself. You're able to find out for and from yourself that they're all wrong. They never were about you. They were just make-believe. They were just other people's thoughts. That was nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with anybody else either. It's all the shit we make up and escape into. Every time we want to avoid our pain or distress, we find a belief to grab hold of. We find an idea to grab hold of. We find a way to feel better. We find a way to feel pleasure. There's nothing wrong with pleasure, but if you have pleasure for too long, it's going to give you a lot of pain. That's what's happening with us now, us humans. Too much pleasure. I'm not saying we need to take away the pleasure, but don't use the pleasure to escape the pain. That's where the imbalance comes. Don't control that. Don't try and control that. You can't anyway. So being with yourself quietly in meditation, the other thing that occurs is any disturbance that you have inherited from other people about being you is also held inside you. And so when some sensation of you comes to life, particularly pain or discomfort or boredom, whatever it happens to be, whenever a sensation of you comes to life, your habitual biases about that sensation kick in as well. Being with that sensation corrects those biases, disproves those biases. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's a very, very important point. Because without negation, without negating everything that you've been taught to think about yourself, without negating that, you don't get back to yourself as you are. So by negating everything you've been taught about yourself, what remains is just the raw facts of what it is to be you. What's left is a peacefully functioning living organism, a human body, a highly intelligent creature that is already functioning perfectly fine as it is. And thinking is only something we learned or invented and added to ourselves purely for the mechanical purposes and processes in life. It doesn't work for understanding yourself. It's not for that. It stops you from understanding yourself. It is biases about yourself. You can't think about yourself. That's not what thinking's for. You can only feel yourself. And in feeling yourself in a very different way, and the only way we know ourselves, in the feeling of ourselves, in the sense of ourselves, in the body of ourselves. We know ourselves as intimately as possibly can be done. And the fears of discomfort and pain dissolve in the processing of pain and discomfort coming and going in and out of our life from the day we're born to the day we're dead. Like any other feeling that we have, like any other sensation. There's no need to be frightened of any sensation inside of you. But the way to find that out for yourself is just to be with it. Gently be with it. Just be with the sensation that you're most frightened of. And the sensation in you that you are most frightened of is the one that you've got the most to learn about yourself from. That's what you've avoided the most. The parts of you that you're most confused about and the most frightened of are the parts of you that you haven't spent enough time with. So how do you spend time with yourself? Just being in the body of you. Just being in the sense of you in the body. I mean this. Just being in the sense of you in the body. That's as deep as you can go. That's all about you. Everything else, any spiritual notion, any thought conjured experience is going away from that, away from what you are. Trying to create an experience which you call, higher, superior, spiritual, unique. It's not. It's just imagination. It takes you further and further and further away from what you actually are. And what you actually are is only known and can only be known when you don't have any ideas or thoughts about that. So anything that is induced through thinking, anything that you need to think about, to experience, is conjured by that thinking. So if you're thinking about yourself, you're going to create an experience within yourself because of that thinking. Just sit quietly still and let that thinking drop away. Just when I say quietly still, not necessarily mentally quietly, just sit still in the sensation of the body of you. The thinking drops away. Your interest in the thinking drops away. And your interest in yourself, in the massive force of life, of nature that you are within your own skin. Very few people have even begun to investigate that. And no traditional meditator has gone near that. This is the elephant in the room that everybody's been overlooking. It's all in the most obvious place, in the body of you. That's where you're going to find yourself. That's where you're going to fulfill yourself. Find the fulfillment that is already there. When you go deep enough into the sensations of you in the body and the thinking drops away, or you stop being influenced by that thinking and able to experience the sense of yourself as it really is, however that appears to begin with, will always end up completely fulfilling. And the significance of it is revealed. The significance of pain or illness is it's bringing about a correction. Primarily, a correction to the separation that's caused by thinking about yourself back into a wholeness in yourself without that separation. When that separation comes to an end, the imaginary separation between a mind and a body come to an end, between your thinking and your physical fact of you come to an end. When you're no longer being drawn away from the sense of yourself into ideas about yourself. And what's left, what remains, exists in its own right. No thought is conjuring the existence of this body and the way in which it feels to be this body. How it feels to be the body of me through every single part of me. It's not something I can choose. It's something that just is. And it changes all the time. I'm not making that up. I'm not conjuring that. I have no way to do that. That's just there. And then negation brings us back, negation of all the ideas we have about ourselves, especially about pain and illness. All that negation, breaking down, questioning all of those ideas, not just buying into them, recognizing that these thoughts aren't mine anyway. So what is mine? Just me. Just the body of me. Thanks for watching. If you want to take your meditation and healing journey deeper, download my meditation app Undo, which is available exclusively on my website undoapp.com. Okay, bye for now.